It was a slow afternoon. Harper was parked up, grabbing a quick lukewarm coffee from a small shop near the loading bays. She was just scrolling through her phone watching a silly video when the whole world outside the little window seemed to snap. Hey there and welcome back. I'm so happy you're here. Grab that blanket, maybe pour yourself a hot drink and get really comfortable because today we're settling in for a story you won't forget. Before we dive any deeper though, let me know how you're doing. Drop a quick comment and tell me what part of the world you're watching from today. And if you want to stay with us through all the twists and turns ahead, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a moment. Alright, let's get back to it. It wasn't a car horn or a loud argument. It was a sharp, distinct crack 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 sound that made every head in the coffee shop duck. It was gunfire. Harper didn't duck. She knew that sound instantly. She tossed her coffee onto the passenger seat and was out the door before the ice had time to settle. The sound came from a narrow, dark alleyway tucked between an old warehouse and that brightly painted Jamaican takeout spot. The smell of jerk chicken usually hung thick in the air there. She saw the scene in a flash. Two men, big and bulky, were backing away from a small, huddled figure. They were moving fast, clearly trying to get away. But as they left, one of them turned to fire a final, ugly shot. That's when Harper saw it was a child. A little girl, probably no older than 6, frozen in absolute terror. Pure instinct took over. There was no time to call for backup. Harper sprinted, running on nothing but pure adrenaline. "Hey!" she shouted, a loud, sharp sound that echoed off the brick walls. The two attackers paused, surprised that anyone would actually interfere. They glanced at Harper, then at the little girl, and seemed to decide that the risk wasn't worth it. They spun around and bolted out the other end of the alley, disappearing into the noise of the main road. Harper ignored them. Her focus was entirely on the small figure shivering on the ground. It was a girl. Lila. She was tiny with wide, frightened eyes the color of pale sea glass. Her dark hair was tied neatly with a bright yellow ribbon, and she wore a nice, if slightly dusty little coat. She looked like she should be holding her mom's hand in a park, not huddled in a back alley after being shot at. Harper dropped to her knees, her training kicking in. "Hey sweetie. You are okay," Harper said, her voice dropping to that calm, soft tone she reserved for trauma patients. "I'm Harper. Can you tell me your name?" Lila just stared, her lips trembling, unable to make a sound. Harper didn't rush her. She just gently put her hands on Lila's shoulders, shielding the small body with her own. She performed a quick check. No obvious blood, no immediate signs of injury, thank God. But Lila was in deep shock. "It's all right, we're safe now," Harper murmured, pulling Lila into a firm, protective hug. She held her close, feeling the light shuddering of the girl's body. For a moment she closed her own eyes, trying to calm the wild beat of her own heart. Who attacks a child? As Harper finally pulled back to look Lila over again, her eyes scanned the ground. Near where the attackers had been standing, stuck on a broken piece of fencing, was a small scrap of dark cloth. It must have snagged as they ran. It wasn't just cloth. It was a patch, an emblem. It was a cold image of a wolf's head, jaw open, embroidered in black thread against a dark gray background. Harper had never seen anything like it. It felt menacing, like some kind of official symbol, but she couldn't place it. She quickly pulled it free and tucked it deep into her jacket pocket. He just knew it was important. "We need to get you out of here," Harper said softly to Lila, who finally seemed to register the words. Lila mumbled one word, a tiny, almost inaudible squeak. "Daddy." Harper helped her stand, holding her steady. "We'll find your daddy, I promise." Just as Harper started thinking through the steps, getting her back to the ambulance, calling authorities, she felt an odd sensation. Like she was being watched intensely. She looked around the alley again. It was empty. But she could almost swear she saw a flicker of movement high up in the window of the old warehouse. A reflection of something dark. She quickly decided it was just nerves. She rushed Lila out of the alley and across the street, walking her quickly to the safety of her parked ambulance. She sat Lila down gently on the curb, away from the chaos. "I'm going to call the police and my boss, and then we'll get you a warm drink, okay?" Harper told her, pulling out her phone. The relief was flooding her system now, making her hands shake a little. She had saved her. The girl was safe. That was all that mattered. Harper made the call quickly. She stayed right next to Lila, rubbing her back gently, offering the simple comfort of her presence. The little girl finally started to look less like stone and more like a child. Her eyes, still wide, were now starting to follow the movement of the people walking by. A few minutes later, an unmarked black car, the kind that looks expensive and quiet, pulled up discreetly near the curb. A well-dressed woman stepped out. She was firm but calm, and she moved with a purpose that demanded attention. She walked straight toward them. She looked at Harper, then down at Lila. The woman didn't speak to Harper. Instead, she knelt down to Lila's eye level. "Lila," she said, her voice soft and strong. "We are going home now, sweetie. You are completely safe." Lila looked at the woman, and a tiny, genuine smile, the first true break in her terror, appeared on her face. "Yes, Auntie Maria," Lila whispered. The woman, Maria, turned to Harper. Her expression softened just slightly, showing a deep thankfulness. "You saved her life, paramedic," Maria said, her tone absolute. "We owe you everything. You won't hear from us again, but you have our silent gratitude." With that, Maria gently lifted Lila, who waved a small, tired hand goodbye to Harper. They got into the quiet black car, and just as quickly and mysteriously as they had arrived, they drove away, leaving Harper alone on the curb. Harper watched them go, feeling a mix of confusion and satisfaction. She had saved the girl, and the girl was clearly safe now, taken by family. Her work was done. She took a deep breath, the taste of clean air replacing the scent of smoke and fear. She had faced danger and ensured that love and protection won the day. She stood up, brushed the dust off her uniform, and felt the small, hard outline of the wolf emblem tucked into her pocket. The mystery was still there, but the child was safe, and that was a beautiful, powerful ending to a terrible afternoon. She had done good. She smiled, letting the hope and warmth of the rescue settle in her chest. The trouble with a job like Harper's is that the adrenaline always leaves a mess behind. When you run toward something terrible, your mind doesn't forget. For Harper, the day after the shooting was quiet, but her insides were still shouting. She was back at work, sitting in the office area of her station in Toronto. She was supposed to be filling out paperwork from a completely normal call. A bicycle accident, nothing more. But every time her pen touched the paper, she just saw Lila's terrified eyes. Harper hated the silence. She kept picturing the two men who ran away and the silver wolf emblem she had hidden in her jacket pocket. It felt like she had buried a small, toxic secret in her life. She tried to distract herself with a cold cup of coffee. That's when her personal cell phone, resting right next to the paperwork, started vibrating. The number was blocked. A long string of zeros. Harper usually let those calls go straight to voicemail. But today, the feeling of being watched, the memory of that warehouse window, was too strong to ignore. She wiped her clammy hand on her pants and answered, keeping her voice level and professional. "Hello." The voice that answered was not a machine or a scammer. It was a man's voice, deep, smooth, and oddly musical. It was the kind of voice that didn't ask for permission, it simply stated facts. "Harper. You are the paramedic. You saved the child." Harper felt her stomach clench. Her official report hadn't even been filed yet. This was too fast, too specific. "Who is this? How did you get my number?" Harper demanded, instantly going on the defensive. She looked around the empty office, feeling exposed. The man gave a soft, dry laugh, the sound of someone utterly unconcerned by her questions. "My name is Dante Moretti. You don't need to know how I know things, only that I do. You were very brave yesterday, rushing into that alley like that. You are a woman of remarkable courage." His words were polite, almost complimentary, but the tone was all wrong. It was chilling, like receiving a silk scarf from a known killer. It wasn't praise, it was ownership. "If you're calling about the girl Lila, she was taken by family. She was fine when she left," Harper stated, trying to shut down the conversation quickly. "Yes, Maria collected her." "Maria is family," Dante confirmed. "Lila is my daughter. And you, Harper, should understand that when someone touches what belongs to me, there is a reckoning." The word reckoning hung heavy in the air. This was the moment Harper's professional fear turned into real human panic. She knew that name. Dante Moretti. The whispered warnings you hear in the emergency room about who you don't cross, who owns half the docks, and whose protection you never, ever want. The city's biggest name, tied to everything dark and dangerous. A mafia boss. "I don't want anything to do with you or your business, Mr. Moretti," Harper said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I did my job. That's it. I'm calling the police about this call right now." The sound of his voice came back, calm as ice water. Do you think the police don't know who I am, Harper? You are thinking like a civilian. Think like someone who knows she just ran in front of a bullet meant for the only child of a powerful man. The men who did that, the men with the wolf symbol you picked up. Yes, I know you have it, they saw you. They know your face. They know where you work. Harper looked down at the jacket pocket where the patch was hidden. He knew everything. She felt the cold sweat on the back of her neck. They are my enemy now and they will look for any weakness, any connection to Lila. You are that connection, Dante stated. You are no longer just a paramedic. You are a loose thread in a very dangerous tapestry. I am calling to tell you that you are now under my protection. I don't need your protection. Harper protested, her anger finally overriding her fear. I need you to leave me alone. I am a good person, a normal person. Don't drag me into whatever this is. Normal is gone, Harper, he replied, sounding almost regretful. But being under my protection is the only thing that guarantees your life stays mostly simple. You risked everything for my little girl. I don't forget that. I will call you again soon. Until then, stay close to home. Then the line went dead. No warning, no polite goodbye. Just silence. Harper slowly lowered the phone, her hand shaking. Her simple life, the one built on rules, uniforms, and doing the next right thing, was gone. It had been replaced by secrets, fear, and the chilling promise of protection from a powerful criminal. She slid her hand into her pocket and gripped the wolf emblem. She felt the fear, yes. But she also felt a deep, stubborn resolve. He was a paramedic. He was a helper. She had saved Lila not for a reward or for protection, but because it was the right thing to do. She wasn't some pawn in Dante Moretti's game. She might be trapped, but she wasn't defeated. Harper took a deep, steadying breath. This man thought he was in control, offering her safety like a gift. She would take his protection, but she would use the space he gave her. She had a piece of evidence, the wolf symbol, and she was now close to the fire. Maybe being this close was the only way to figure out how to stop the kind of evil that shoots at children. She looked down at the paperwork, smiling a small, fierce, private smile. She wasn't just safe, she was resolved. She would find a way to make sure that the good she did in that alley truly won out, and that this darkness wouldn't touch her or anyone else she cared about. The fight wasn't over. It had just changed rules. When Dante Moretti promised protection, he didn't wait around for Harper to agree. The very next morning, before the sun was even fully up over the skyscrapers of Toronto, a sleek black car pulled up quietly right outside Harper's small apartment building. It was the same kind of expensive, silent car that had taken Lila away. Harper was already awake, sitting at her kitchen table, staring at her cold coffee. She knew the car was for her, even before two men in dark, perfectly tailored suits stepped out and stood waiting on the sidewalk. They weren't obvious about it. They just stood there watching the front door. They looked less like bodyguards and more like very patient, very dangerous businessmen. Harper knew she had two choices. Stay inside and wait for the men who shot at Lila to find her, or go with the devil who promised to protect her. She quickly dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, her most normal, dependable clothes. She grabbed her purse, checked that the small, hard wolf emblem was still tucked deep in her pocket, and walked out the door. One of the men stepped forward as she approached. He was tall, serious, and had eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice flat. "Dante sends his regards. We are taking you to a temporary residence." Harper looked at the car, then at the man. "I didn't agree to this. And I'm not going to be locked up." The man didn't change his expression. "You will not be locked up. You will be safe. It is necessary." He opened the back door of the car. It wasn't a question. Harper took a deep breath. Resistance wouldn't work here. It would only make them treat her like a problem. She slid into the back seat. The second man joined the driver and the car pulled away, silent as a whisper. The drive was long, taking her out of the familiar, busy city and into the green, secluded countryside, maybe somewhere just north of Toronto or tucked away near the border, where the rich hide their homes. They eventually turned down a private road lined with tall trees, leading to a huge, walled property. The safe house was not a house. It was a massive estate, more like a hotel or a castle tucked away in the woods. The stone walls were high, the gates were heavy iron, and there were cameras everywhere. This was the world Dante Moretti lived in, luxurious on the surface but caged and heavily guarded underneath. When the car stopped, Harper was led into a large foyer. Everything was polished marble, dark wood, and silence. It felt expensive and cold. There were men everywhere, but they weren't bustling. They were standing still watching. They weren't wearing uniforms, but they all wore the same intense, watchful expression. They saw Harper, the ordinary paramedic in sneakers, and their expressions clearly signaled deep mistrust. Who is she? Why is she here? As one of the men started to show her to a comfortable-looking but isolated guest suite, Harper stopped. Wait. I want to see Lila. The man hesitated, looking nervous. Ms. Moretti is in the main living area, but... Harper didn't wait for him to finish. I ran into an alley full of gunfire for her. I'm seeing her, she stated, her simple courage suddenly making her more imposing than the armed guards. He reluctantly led her toward a large, bright room that overlooked a massive green lawn. And there she was. Lila. The little girl was sitting cross-legged on a huge leather armchair, focused completely on a large book resting on her lap. She was wearing a soft cashmere sweater and her hair was neat, but she didn't look like a porcelain doll. She looked like a child who was thinking very hard. She looked up when Harper walked in and her sea-glass eyes lit up with genuine happiness. Harper. Lila dropped the book and launched herself off the chair, running toward the paramedic. Harper knelt instantly, opening her arms, and the small, solid weight of the child crashed into her. Hey sweetie. I told you we'd get you somewhere safe. Lila held on to her tightly. You came back. I told Auntie Maria you would. As they pulled back, Harper finally got a good look at Lila up close. She was only about 6, but her face wasn't baby round. It was sharp, attentive, and surprisingly expressive. She didn't have the carefree air of a sheltered child. Even in this luxurious setting, there was a deep current of intelligence and, surprisingly, fearlessness about her. What were you reading? Harper asked, pointing to the book. She expected a fairy tale. Lila proudly picked it up. It was a heavy, illustrated history book about European dynasties and powerful families. This is about alliances, Lila announced, her small voice serious. Daddy says I have to understand how power works so I can see who is cheating. Harper blinked. 6 years old, reading about alliances and cheating. This was not a normal child. A powerful voice broke the moment. She understands more than most adults I know. Dante Moretti walked into the room. He was everything the voice on the phone had promised. Tall, commanding, and dressed in clothes that probably cost more than Harper's annual rent. But what struck Harper wasn't the luxury. It was the way he looked at Lila. All the coldness, the menace, the authority, it vanished when he looked at his daughter. It was pure, simple love. He looked at Harper, the polite menace returning, but softened by a flicker of gratitude. Thank you for coming, Harper. You will stay here. You are Lila's guest. You are safe. I'm not a guest, Mr. Moretti. I'm a paramedic. I need to know when I can leave, Harper insisted, standing her ground, trying not to look at the armed men who were now all watching their interaction like it was the most important thing happening in the world. Dante just smiled, a thin, unsettling expression. You can leave when the danger is gone, Harper. For now you are valuable. You are the woman who protected my child. He signaled to his men, a quick motion that meant keep watching. Harper was caught. She was in the lion's den. But as she looked down at Lila, who had snuck her hand into Harper's, a huge wave of warmth and hope washed over her. This small, fearless girl, who was clearly already too smart for her age, needed a normal influence. She needed a friend who wasn't part of this dark world of alliances and violence. Harper smiled genuinely at Lila. Well, if I'm staying, she said to the little girl, you and I are definitely going to trade in this boring history book for something much funnier. Lila giggled, a sound that cut through the silence of the massive house like a beam of sunlight. Harper looked Dante Moretti straight in the eye, communicating silently. You might control the house, but I'll protect the heart inside it. In that moment, holding Lila's hand, Harper felt not fear but purpose. She was trapped, yes, but she was trapped with the one thing she truly cared about saving. Hope and love had found a tiny foothold right inside the lion's den. Being safe inside Dante Moretti's massive estate was a strange kind of prison. Harper had a beautiful, sweet, delicious food and the easy company of Lila, but she was trapped. Every hallway, every door, and every quiet man watching her was a reminder that her freedom was gone, replaced by a sense of constant, watchful dread. But Harper wasn't the kind of person who sat still and waited. Her purpose wasn't to be a pampered guest. It was to figure out why someone would shoot at a child and make sure those people could never do it again. Her only piece of real evidence was the small, ugly wolf emblem tucked in her pocket. In her simple world, you called the police when you found evidence. In this new world, you had to find answers on your own. One afternoon, after spending an hour reading a very silly book about a talking dog with Lila, Harper found her chance. Lila was taking a quiet nap and Dante was nowhere to be seen. The guard who usually stood near her suite was doing a rotation check farther down the hall. Harper slipped out, moving quietly through the luxurious, silent hallways. She went to the main library, a room full of huge leather-bound books that smelled of old paper and wealth. She didn't look for fiction, she looked for facts. She needed to know about the wolf. She found a section tucked away behind a large globe, dedicated to the history of organized crime in North America and Europe. Books filled with names, dates, and old newspaper clippings. Harper pulled out a heavy volume and flipped through the index, searching for anything that mentioned a wolf symbol, a crest, or an animal icon. It took nearly an hour, hunched over a heavy wooden table, before she found it. The section was titled, "The Silver Wolves, A Fading Power." Harper felt her blood run cold as she read the history. The Silver Wolves were not a street gang. They were an old, vicious Italian-Canadian crime faction, powerful decades ago, who had been pushed out by the rise of Dante Moretti's own family. They were known for their brutality and their distinctive symbol, a stylized silver wolf's head. The more she read, the clearer the picture became. The Silver Wolves had always seen Dante as the man who had stolen their legacy. The attack on Lila wasn't random violence or an accident. It was a carefully planned message. They were striking at the very thing Dante valued most: his secret, beloved daughter. The attackers weren't just low-level thugs. They were members of a serious, dangerous rival faction. Harper's mind raced. This was far worse than she thought. This wasn't just revenge. This was a war for control. And she, the ordinary paramedic, was now standing directly between two powerful, violent organizations. She realized with a horrifying clarity, she wasn't just a witness or a protected guest. The moment the Silver Wolves saw her face, the moment they knew the paramedic shielded Lila and survived, Harper became a target. To the wolves, she was now a symbol of Dante's protection, an enemy who had interfered, and perhaps a loose end they needed to silence before she could identify them. Just as the shock of this realization hit her, the heavy library door creaked open. It was one of Dante's most trusted, serious guards, a man named Marco. Marco was tall, quiet, and possessed a permanent look of deep suspicion. He didn't even pretend to be friendly. Marco spotted Harper immediately, standing next to the massive history book. He walked toward her slowly, his eyes fixed not on her face, but on the open page she was staring at. "What are you looking at, paramedic?" Marco's voice was low, heavy with mistrust. Harper quickly closed the massive book, feeling her heart try to beat its way out of her chest. She needed to lie, but she needed it to be a believable, ordinary lie. "History," Harper replied, trying to sound casual, as if she was just browsing. "I saw a picture of an old Toronto street in the index and was just looking it up." Marco didn't believe her for a second. His eyes narrowed and he glanced at the spine of the book. "The Shadow Kings, Power and Crime in the North." He knew exactly what she was reading. "Mr. Moretti does not like people nosing around his affairs," Marco warned, stepping closer. "Your job here is simple. Keep Lila entertained. Nothing else." Harper knew she had to defuse the situation quickly before Marco reported her to Dante. She straightened up, meeting his suspicious gaze with her own calm, coffee-colored eyes. She let the paramedic professionalism take over. "My job is to save lives," Harper corrected him, her voice quiet but firm. "And saving a life doesn't stop just because I step out of an ambulance. Those men tried to kill a 6-year-old girl. If you want me to keep Lila safe, I need to know who the enemy is. Your boss told me I was part of this. Well, now I know the name of the enemy. The Silver Wolves." Marco didn't back down, but her directness seemed to stun him for a second. Her honesty was unpredictable in a world built on lies. "You do not speak that name," Marco hissed. "And you do not investigate. You are protected, not useful." "If I'm useful," Harper countered, matching his serious tone, "it's because I think like a normal person, not a guard. And a normal person sees a clear target on my back now. Those wolves know I saved her. I am a part of this fight whether I want to be or not." She gently tapped her jacket pocket where the wolf emblem sat. I know what this is now. And I am not going to let them succeed. My safety is Lila's safety. Marco stared at her for a long, calculating moment. He didn't trust her, but he couldn't deny her fierce loyalty to the child. He slowly backed away, the mistrust still heavy in his gaze, but the suspicion slightly less sharp. Do not leave the grounds again, paramedic, he ordered, his voice still a warning. He turned and left, leaving Harper alone in the massive library. Harper leaned against the table, trembling slightly, realizing how close she had come to being discovered. But the fear was immediately replaced by a surge of clarity and resolve. She knew the name of the enemy. She was a target. She might be trapped in a dangerous place, but she wasn't powerless. She would use the knowledge she had gained to protect Lila and to ensure that these vicious silver wolves lost their cruel war. Her small, ordinary life was caught in a storm, but she was going to face it head-on, determined to see justice win. The knowledge that the enemy was called the Silver Wolves, a powerful, ruthless rival, changed everything for Harper. Her simple goal of keeping Lila entertained turned into a desperate, focused mission to understand how a 6-year-old was tied up in a war. She knew she couldn't rely on Dante or his guards like Marco. They were too suspicious and their methods were brutal. Harper was an outsider, so she had to use her eyes and her empathy, the two tools that had always served her best as a paramedic. She started spending all her time with Lila. They played board games, read funny books, and spent afternoons coloring massive pictures of dinosaurs. To anyone watching, it looked like a warm, normal relationship. But Harper was always observing, searching for the crack in the child's armor. One afternoon they were in the massive, quiet garden area of the estate. Lila was drawing, intensely focused, while Harper kept a casual watch on the perimeter, trying to look normal while feeling anything but. Harper noticed Lila's drawing wasn't of a princess or a flower. It was a detailed, almost architectural sketch of the alley where the shooting happened. What are you drawing, sweetie? Harper asked softly, kneeling beside her. Lila looked up, her sea-glass eyes serious. I'm drawing where they stood, she said, pointing to the drawing. And where the shadows were longest. And where the noise was best. The noise. Harper frowned. The echo. I knew if I screamed at the wall just there. Lila tapped a spot near the dumpster she had been hiding behind. The sound would bounce back toward the main street and make it sound louder and closer than it was. That's why you came so fast, right? Harper was stunned into silence. Most kids would be curled up crying after a trauma like that. Lila was breaking down the acoustics of the alley. A sharp, vivid memory flashed in Harper's mind. When she arrived, Lila wasn't screaming. She was frozen, silent, hiding poorly. But then Harper remembered the moment before she shouted, "He!" She thought she heard a strange, high-pitched noise just before the gunman turned away. She had dismissed it as her own imagination. But what if it was Lila? Who taught you to think like that, Lila? Harper asked, her voice quiet. Lila shrugged, picking up a yellow crayon. Daddy's men. They play games with me. She then pointed to a different spot on the drawing. I put something right here before they came to. I think they stepped on it when they ran away. Harper felt a cold knot tighten in her chest. She remembered seeing the silver wolf attackers flee. One of them had stumbled slightly, almost imperceptibly, near the mouth of the alley. She had focused on the emblem, but she hadn't considered the trip was intentional. What did you put down, Lila? Lila gave a tiny, private smile that was unsettling on a child so young. It was just a small pebble. But I wrapped it in a piece of clear wire like a trip line. Harper couldn't believe it. This wasn't a child who just survived. This was a child who was trained to react, to fight back, to lay a trap. Lila was no ordinary victim. Just then, a flashback started playing in Harper's mind, pieced together from earlier weeks of her interaction with the girl. Harper was trying to help Lila open a jar of jam once. Lila didn't complain, she didn't ask for help. Instead, she quietly picked up a kitchen towel, wrapped it around the jar, and tapped the lid hard on the counter edge to break the vacuum seal, opening it on her own. It was a technique, not a struggle. Another time a glass of juice spilled. Lila's first move wasn't to cry or grab a cloth. It was to instantly jump back 3 feet to avoid slipping. A reflex motion that was clearly practiced, and the way she behaved after the attack. No tears, no screams, just that strange, rigid composure until Harper arrived. Harper realized the terror she had seen in the alley was real. But Lila's response was not that of a typical 6-year-old. She was a child of this dark, dangerous world, trained from a young age to survive. The fear in her eyes was because she knew the stakes, not because she was helpless. This was Dante's great, terrible secret. He wasn't just hiding his daughter, he was preparing her for war. Harper's mind shifted. If Lila was laying traps, then her pursuers were likely hurt or at least delayed. That small pebble and wire could have been enough to throw off their balance, making one stumble, which is exactly why one lagged behind and got spotted, leading to the emblem being seen or lost. This explains why Dante's team was so focused on finding the attackers quickly. Lila hadn't just survived, she had set an amateur counter-trap that might have actually worked. She had bought her own rescue time. Harper looked at Lila, now humming softly as she colored the picture of the alley. "Lila," Harper said, choosing her words carefully. "Did you tell your daddy about the pebble?" Lila shook her head slowly. "No. He would say it was reckless. Auntie Maria would be angry." She looked up at Harper with a look of pure, childlike appeal. "It's our secret. Right, Harper? Just like my favorite color being blue, even though I wear yellow ribbons." Harper realized she was not just protecting a helpless child. She was protecting a resourceful, secretive little girl who was fighting her own silent battle. This realization cut through Harper's fear. She wasn't dealing with a brute like Marco or a scary boss like Dante. She was dealing with a clever child. "It's our secret," Harper agreed, giving Lila a gentle, proud squeeze. The revelation was both shocking and deeply reassuring. Lila wasn't just waiting to be saved. She was actively setting traps and using her wits. This meant that the silver wolves were likely frustrated, chasing shadows, and maybe even injured because of a small, clever girl. Harper felt a wave of hope rush through her. She was now part of a secret alliance with the most intelligent person in the house. She knew Lila's hidden strength, and together, they could find a way out of this darkness. Justice wasn't just coming from the guns of Dante's men. It was coming from the quiet resilience of this little girl. Love and cleverness were winning this battle, one secret at a time. Harper felt like a small island surrounded by an ocean of sharks. Knowing Lila's secret skills gave her comfort, but discovering the Silver Wolves' true power had only magnified the danger. Now she had to act like everything was normal while constantly searching for the next inevitable wave of trouble. Her biggest problem wasn't the enemy outside the walls. It was the people inside. Dante's guards were too silent, too watchful, and too suspicious of her. She couldn't share her discovery about the Silver Wolves or Lila's trap, because she realized she had no idea who she could truly trust. One chilly evening after putting Lila to bed, Harper couldn't settle down. She knew the house was full of ears, so she decided the safest way to think was to move. She wandered through the dimly lit ground floor, pretending to be admiring the expensive art on the walls. She eventually found herself near the secure communications room, a place Dante's men treated like a high-security bank vault. As she passed by, the heavy door was slightly ajar. A single line of light spilled out onto the marble floor. Harper stopped, her heart thumping against her ribs. She heard voices, low and urgent. She couldn't resist. She slipped quietly into the deep shadow of a velvet curtain near the door, pressing her ear to the crack. One voice was definitely Dante Moretti's, calm, deep, and filled with cold authority. "The perimeter was breached 2 nights ago. The Silver Wolves are closing in. They know Lila is here," Dante was saying. "How did they find this location so fast? Only 5 people knew this safe house was active." Then the second voice replied. It wasn't one of the usual serious-voiced guards. It was Auntie Maria, the well-dressed woman who had picked up Lila from the alley. She was part of Dante's inner circle, a person of trust, almost family. "Dante, you must consider all possibilities," Maria said, her voice smooth and measured. "Perhaps the paramedic Harper talked. She is an outsider, she is weak. You brought her right into our center." Harper froze in the shadows, her blood running cold. Maria was planting suspicion on her. But that wasn't the betrayal. That was just protecting her own position. She listened closer. "The paramedic is either brave or stupid, Maria." "She is not a traitor," Dante insisted, his voice impatient. "I trust her instinct for protection more than some of my own men." Maria sighed, a subtle, sharp sound of frustration. "Your sentiment is a risk, Dante. But fine. Let's look at the others. Marco is loyal but slow. And Pietro, He is worried about the money. He thinks you are too distracted by the child. Harper's mind flashed to Pietro. He was a longtime associate always seen near Dante, usually handling the complex business and finance. A man who looked more like an accountant than a dangerous mobster. Then she heard a sound, the rapid clicking of keys on a security console within the communications room, followed by a muffled short burst of talk that wasn't in English, maybe Italian. It was too fast for Harper to understand. Pietro, what are you doing with the encrypted logs? Dante asked, a dangerous edge in his voice. There was a moment of silence. Then Pietro's voice, usually smooth and polite, came out strained and defensive. Just checking the routing of the surveillance feed, boss. Making sure it was clear for your update. Marco's feed was sluggish on the east gate. Leave it, Dante ordered sharply. And send a confirmation that the shipment is delayed for 2 days. Tell them a problem with the documentation. Yes, boss. Delayed for 2 days. Documentation problem, Pietro repeated dutifully. Harper's mind raced, fueled by the paranoia that was quickly becoming her reality. Why was Pietro fiddling with the logs right when the conversation turned to mistrust? Why was he so nervous? She remembered reading about the Silver Wolves in the library. They were known for crippling their rivals through financial sabotage and cutting off supply lines, often using informants inside the rival's organization. The true betrayal hit Harper with the force of a physical blow. Pietro wasn't nervous about a sluggish feed. He had been accessing the encrypted logs, likely passing information about the safe house and the next shipment directly to the Silver Wolves. The wolves had found the safe house so quickly not because of her but because of Pietro. He was the snake in the grass. The realization made her physically sick. She couldn't trust Maria, who was actively trying to blame her. She couldn't trust Marco, who only saw her as an interference. And she certainly couldn't trust Pietro, who was selling them all out. Harper held her breath, trying not to move an inch as the conversation ended. She heard footsteps approaching the door. She quickly and silently backed away, slipping around the corner just as Dante and Maria emerged, looking serious and worried. Pietro stayed inside the room, presumably checking the feed. Harper pressed her back against the cool wall, trying to slow her breathing. The walls felt like they were closing in. She was a simple paramedic, and she had just discovered a crucial act of high-level treason within a terrifying criminal empire. She was trapped with the very people who were being targeted, and the traitor was now right in the nerve center. If she told Dante, she risked being killed by Pietro first, or worse, being disbelieved and imprisoned by Dante himself, who was currently suspicious of everyone, especially her. She closed her eyes, fear a cold blanket wrapping around her. But then she thought of Lila, small and fierce, silently setting traps in the alley. Lila was depending on Harper's intelligence, not her strength. Harper silently pulled out the wolf emblem from her pocket. The fear was real, but so was the mission. Pietro was the traitor. The Silver Wolves were the enemy. She was completely alone, but she had a secret that could save them all. She wasn't just safe. She was now a secret agent of justice, fighting against overwhelming darkness from the inside. She would find proof, she would protect Lila, and she would make sure that the truth, and the good she was trying to do, won out over this terrible betrayal. Life in Dante Moretti's world was a constant, dizzying change of rules. One day you were hiding in a fortress. The next you were expected to walk into a glittering, crowded room where half the people probably wanted you dead. Harper had discovered the betrayal. Pietro was the traitor. But she couldn't confront Dante. She had no solid proof, and a wrong move would certainly put her life and Lila's in immediate danger. For now she had to play her role, the quiet, harmless friend of the child. Dante had announced they were attending a major annual charity gala. It was a massive high-profile event that would draw all the powerful, dangerous people in the city, including, Dante hoped, the Silver Wolves. It was a calculated risk, a way to flush the enemy out into the open. Harper was horrified. You want to take Lila out there? Into a crowd of people you know are trying to kill her. Dante, dressed in a sharp black suit that made him look even more imposing, just gave her his chillingly calm stare. Lila must be seen as safe and untouchable, Harper. I will be the shield. You will be her shadow. Harper had to accept. She found herself squeezed into a beautiful, unfamiliar dress, alone from Maria, who still eyed her with suspicion. She was used to scrubs and rubber boots, not high heels and silk. She felt awkward and completely out of place in the grand ballroom, which could have been in any wealthy district in New York, London, or Vancouver. Crystal chandeliers glittered over hundreds of wealthy guests, all smiling, all watching. Lila, however, was in her element. She wore a simple, elegant dark velvet dress, and despite being surrounded by strangers, she moved through the room with the confidence of royalty. The plan was simple if terrifying. Lila would remain hidden in plain sight, sticking close to the flow of guests near the main exits while Dante handled the official business. Harper's job was to never let Lila out of her sight. But the moment they stepped inside, Harper's paranoia took over. Every face looked suspicious. She saw Pietro the trader standing near the bar looking far too relaxed. He saw Maria watching Harper more than the room. Harper quickly positioned herself near Lila, who was politely accepting a glass of sparkling cider. "Stay right next to me, Lila," Harper murmured, her voice tight. "We cannot lose sight of each other." "I won't," Lila promised, her large eyes sparkling under the light. But the next second Lila saw an elderly gentleman across the room who waved. "Oh, there's Mr. Bell. I must say hello." Before Harper could grab her hand, Lila darted away, vanishing into the swirl of black suits and shimmering gowns. Harper panicked. "Lila, stop." Harper tried to follow, but the crowd was too thick. She pushed through a knot of guests, her eyes searching frantically. She finally saw Lila standing near a massive floral arrangement. But she wasn't alone. Lila was talking to two men. They were impeccably dressed, but Harper instantly recognized the coldness in their eyes and the sharp angles of their faces. They had the same unsettling stillness as the men who had attacked her in the alley. They were silver wolves. Harper started to move, ready to scream or fight, but then she froze. Lila was completely calm. The small girl was holding a large, intricate glass ornament, showing it to the men. She was talking sweetly, all bright smiles and ribbons, seemingly unaware that she was speaking to two assassins. Harper watched, breathing shallowly, unable to reach them. "Isn't it beautiful, gentlemen?" Lila said, holding the heavy glass piece high. "But Auntie Maria said these are very fragile. If you hold it wrong, it might slip right out of your hands and smash everywhere." As she spoke, Lila slightly, almost imperceptibly, bumped the hand of the man closest to her. The man, clearly focused on their target, Lila, instinctively grabbed the glass to steady it, twisting his hand awkwardly around the fragile base. His partner was distracted by the movement. Then Lila turned away sweetly and melted back into the crowd, leaving the two men standing there, both looking down at the awkward, heavy glass ornament they were now clutching. Harper finally reached her. "Lila, what were you doing? They were dangerous." Lila simply held Harper's hand, her composure unbroken. "They were blocking the kitchen service entrance, Harper. And they had very cold hands. Now they are holding that heavy glass and cannot move quickly without dropping it. I heard them whispering about the west corridor. That is where they want to corner Daddy later." Harper stared at the child in disbelief. Lila hadn't been greeting an enemy, she had been manipulating them. She had identified the threat, created a temporary physical distraction, the heavy, awkward glass, and gathered intelligence about their escape route. She had set a trap right in the middle of a crowded gala without Harper, Dante, or the guards even noticing. Just as this shocking realization hit Harper, Dante finally reached them, his face a mask of controlled fury at Lila's disappearing act. "Lila, you do not wander off," he hissed under his breath. Lila looked up at her father. "I know, Daddy. But those two men were looking at you with bad eyes. I made sure their hands were busy so they can't throw anything for a few minutes." She looked down at the hand that had held the glass. "They have very rough skin. They are not gentlemen." Dante followed her gaze to the two silver wolves still awkwardly holding the crystal piece. His eyes widened slightly in an instant of understanding and pride. He turned to Harper, a flicker of something close to respect in his gaze. "She is a true Moretti," he murmured. Harper didn't nod to Dante, she simply squeezed Lila's hand fiercely. She might not trust the man, but she trusted the girl. "The west corridor," Harper whispered to Dante, keeping her face perfectly calm. "They are planning a move there." Dante's eyes snapped to her. He understood. The outsider paramedic had seen the truth in the elegant room, thanks to his little girl. The betrayal within Pietro was still a threat, but right now the wolves were exposed. A moment later, chaos erupted far across the room. The two silver wolves, trying to communicate with each other, bumped shoulders, and the fragile glass ornament slipped, smashing loudly on the marble floor. The noise, the sudden halt of music, and the rush of guards towards the disruption was all the opening Dante needed. He gave Harper a tiny, significant nod. Time to go. Harper grabbed Lila, holding her close to her side. They didn't run. They simply walked quickly and calmly toward a side door, melting away from the scene. They had walked into the lion's den, but thanks to the cleverness of a 6-year-old, the predators had been momentarily distracted, and the prey was escaping unharmed. Harper smiled, feeling a rush of protective triumph. They had exposed the enemy's plan and escaped the trap. Justice and wit had won the night. Escaping the gala was like running from a sudden storm. One minute the room was glittering with lights and music. The next it was shattered glass, chaos, and the quick, sharp movements of Dante's guards securing their exit. Harper and Lila were rushed back to the estate, the whole trip taking place in cold silence. When they finally arrived, the house felt charged with frantic energy. Guards were moving fast, talking in low, urgent tones into their comms, and the atmosphere was thick with crisis, not relief. Harper led Lila to her room, helping her change out of the velvet dress and into a soft, ordinary pajama set. She sat with the little girl, rubbing her back until Lila's quick, nervous breathing finally slowed into the deep, even rhythm of sleep. Only then did Harper leave the room, closing the door softly behind her. She needed to find Dante. She needed to report the West Corridor threat and ask what the next move was. She needed a plan. She found Maria in the main lounge, pacing furiously, her elegant gown looking crumpled and out of place in the sterile tension of the house. "Where is Dante?" Harper asked, her voice tight with concern. Maria stopped pacing and turned, her eyes dark with genuine panic this time. Not just suspicion of Harper. "He's gone," Maria said, the words barely a whisper. "He left immediately after we returned. He told no one where he was going, only that he had a personal matter to settle." Harper stared at her, stunned. A personal matter? After the Silver Wolves just tried to assassinate his daughter in a public place? That's insane. Maria ran a hand through her perfectly styled hair, looking defeated. "It is worse than you know, Harper. Dante didn't just disappear, he went to face a ghost. The two wolves you and Lila distracted at the gala, they didn't just target Lila. They delivered a message. A symbol that Dante recognizes. It's a threat tied to his family's past years ago. Something he thought was buried." Harper remembered the frantic energy of the guards, the crisis atmosphere. This wasn't just about protecting the Empire. It was about protecting a decades-old wound. Dante hadn't left to secure his business. He had left to confront a personal vendetta. A vendetta that now threatened to destroy everything he had built, because he had gone after it alone, leaving his defenses down. He went after them, didn't he? Alone, Harper realized, a cold wave of dread washing over her. Maria gave a small, defeated nod. He saw red. He's gone to face the man who he believes ordered the attack, the true leader of the Silver Wolves. A man named Valente. Dante thinks if he cuts off the head, the snake dies. But it's a trap, Harper. It has to be. The full weight of the situation landed on Harper's shoulders. The paranoia about Pietro, the attacks, the elegant disguise. It all faded compared to this immediate, terrifying reality. Dante, the only person powerful enough to protect them, was now gone and walking into a deadly personal ambush. Harper was standing in the middle of a war zone, and suddenly she was the only one left holding the map. She looked at the silence of Lila's room, then back at the frantic, useless worry in Maria's eyes. She had two choices, both terrifying. Follow Dante. Try to find him, warn him about Pietro, the internal traitor. And help the one person who could secure their survival. This meant rushing headfirst into Dante's deadly, personal fight, a guaranteed life-or-death situation, or protect Lila. Stay at the estate, secure the child, and deal with the internal threat, Pietro, on her own, hoping Dante somehow survived long enough to return. This was safer for Lila in the short term, but it meant facing Dante's paranoid, armed men without any authority, knowing the traitor was still amongst them. Maria grasped Harper's arm, desperate. "You have the clearest sight, paramedic. What do we do? We have to send men after him." Harper gently pulled her arm away, needing space to think clearly. She wasn't Dante's general, she was Lila's protector. If I go after Dante, she thought, Lila is left here unguarded with Pietro still inside and Maria still focused on old vendettas. Lila is the primary target. If Dante dies, they will come back here immediately. If I stay, I can expose Pietro, secure the house and save the life that truly matters. Lila's. The decision wasn't about courage. It was about true priority. Harper's promise was to the little girl who had set her own traps and shown her incredible resilience. Harper looked at Maria, her face set in the determined, calm lines of a woman making a tough call under pressure. We don't go after Dante, Harper said, her voice firm and ringing with unexpected authority. His vendetta is his own choice. My job is here. She stepped toward the door, turning her full attention back to the internal threat. We have a traitor, Pietro, operating right now, diverting security and supplies. If Dante is caught in a trap, Pietro will be the one opening the front gates for the Silver Wolves when they come for Lila. Maria stared at her, shocked by the sudden sharp shift in focus. Pietro? Impossible. He's been here for years. Loyalty doesn't matter when money is involved, Harper countered, channeling Dante's cold logic. I know he's the weak link. I'm going to find the evidence and expose him before he kills us all. Harper walked purposefully toward the communications room, the same place she had overheard the suspicious conversation. She was terrified. She was about to confront a powerful criminal traitor, armed with nothing but her wits and the certainty of her mission. She was a paramedic, not a spy, but she was going to save this little girl. She looked back once at the closed door of Lila's room. She had been left in charge of a world on the brink of collapse. Her decision was made. She would protect the innocent, expose the betrayal and trust that justice and Lila's future was worth the massive risk. Love and courage would hold the line. Harper didn't waste a second. Her focus was not on her fear but on the simple, urgent task of survival. She knew she had to get Lila away from the main estate before Pietro, the traitor, realized his boss was gone and the Silver Wolves arrived. She didn't try to confront Pietro. That was a fight she couldn't win alone. Instead, she rushed to Maria. Maria, we need to move Lila now. Pietro knows we're a target. We have to take her to a place he doesn't know about, Harper commanded, her voice calm but leaving no room for argument. Maria, desperate and shocked by the realization of Pietro's betrayal, finally submitted to Harper's authority. There's one place. A small hunting cabin far off the main roads. It's Dante's emergency holdout. Only family knows about it. In the dead of night, Harper and Maria quietly moved Lila. The little girl woke up instantly but made no sound, simply dressing quickly and holding Harper's hand tight. The trust in her small, serious eyes was the only payment Harper needed. They left the frantic, traitor-filled estate behind and drove for hours until they reached a small, rustic cabin deep in the woods, maybe in the remote parts of upstate New York or a hidden area of the Canadian Shield. It was quiet, ordinary, and miles away from marble floors and surveillance cameras. In this simple, safe space, the tension finally eased. Lila, no longer surrounded by guards and polished surfaces, started to relax. She sat curled next to Harper on a faded old sofa, looking like a real 6-year-old for the first time. You're very fast, Harper, Lila whispered, leaning her head on Harper's shoulder. You didn't even look scared when you told Maria we had to go. Harper smiled sadly. Everyone gets scared, sweetie. The trick is to not let the fear make your choices for you. And in that quiet moment, with the only sound being the soft crackle of a log in the small fireplace, Harper began to open up, sharing a piece of her own past she never told anyone. She realized that everything she had done in her life, every choice, every risk, had prepared her for this moment of protecting Lila. Harper was raised in a small, rough area of her city, a neighborhood often overlooked by the police. When she was about 10, a group of older teenagers started bullying her best friend, demanding money. Harper didn't fight them physically. Instead, she quietly learned their schedules, found out where they stashed their meager money, and replaced it with a handwritten, childish note that simply said, "You've been warned." She exposed their secrets, not their bodies. The teenagers were so unnerved by the precise, quiet invasion that they never bothered anyone again. She learned to fight with her wits, not her fists. Later, as a teenager, she lived through a terrifying house fire that started in a neighbor's kitchen. While everyone else panicked, Harper, remembering a school fire safety video, didn't run out. She located the youngest child, wrapped her in a damp blanket and followed the baseboard to the back door, staying low to the ground. She was terrified, but she focused entirely on the small task of movement and survival. She learned to focus on the mission, not the fear under extreme pressure. She saw now that the paramedic job wasn't her beginning. It was the natural continuation of a life spent running toward chaos and finding the small, smart way out. "When I was little," Harper whispered to Lila, gently stroking her hair, "I learned that when the world gets loud you have to get quiet. You look for the crack in the wall, not the big door." Lila looked up at her with profound understanding. "The wall is Pietro and the big door is the silver wolves," she murmured. "You are looking for the crack so they don't see us." "Exactly," Harper confirmed. For the first time since the shooting, Lila let go of her composure. She wasn't talking about alliances or traps. She was talking about a little girl's heart. "I miss my mom," Lila suddenly whispered, her voice trembling. "Daddy says she's in a safe place, but I haven't seen her in a very long time." A single, silent tear slipped down her cheek. Harper didn't ask questions about Dante's dead or missing wife. She didn't press for details. She just pulled the small, fragile body close, offering simple, unconditional comfort. "I know you miss her, sweetie. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. You are the bravest person I know, but being brave doesn't mean you don't hurt," Harper reassured her. In that small, quiet cabin, Lila finally let go of the rigid training Dante had imposed on her. She cried not from fear but from relief in the pain of loneliness. And Harper, who had learned to suppress her own vulnerability to survive, allowed herself to fully embrace the protective love she felt for this child. The sacrifice of her own safety, of her normal life, meant nothing next to this bond. She had saved Lila's life, but Lila had saved Harper's heart, reconnecting her with the fierce, protective girl she once was. Harper held Lila until the little girl's breathing evened out once more, her tiny hand clutching Harper's sweater. They were completely alone, facing the unknown dangers of a massive mafia war and a betrayed empire. But in the quiet cabin, bathed in the gentle light of the fireplace, they weren't weak. They were a team. Harper would protect the child, and in return Lila gave her a true, meaningful purpose. Love, loyalty, and quiet courage had cemented a powerful, unbreakable bond that neither Dante nor the Silver Wolves could ever touch. The small cabin was a world away from the violence and betrayal of the estate. For 2 days Harper and Lila lived in a bubble of quiet, normal life, reading, cooking simple food, and just being safe. But the world outside doesn't stop spinning, and a life built on secrets never stays quiet for long. Harper knew Maria was out there, trying to handle the chaos left by Dante's disappearance and Pietro's betrayal. She had left Maria with strict instructions: find proof on Pietro but stay silent and safe. Late on the second day, a quiet knock came at the cabin door. It wasn't the sound of danger. It was too measured. Harper opened the door just a crack. It was Maria, looking exhausted and carrying a waterproof duffel bag. "We have to move again, Harper." "We have proof," Maria whispered, stepping quickly inside. Maria explained that they had confirmed everything. Pietro was working with the Silver Wolves, giving them Dante's routes and locations. But the true revelation was far worse, something that shook the foundation of Dante's empire. Maria pulled out a small encrypted tablet from the bag. This was in Pietro's private safe. It's an encrypted message log. The attacks, the one on the alley, the one at the gala, they weren't ordered by Valente, the head of the Silver Wolves. Maria looked at Harper, her eyes swimming with disbelief and pain. They were ordered by someone far closer. Someone who used the Silver Wolves as tools. Maria tapped the screen. The message log displayed a series of cold, sharp commands, detailing the location of the alley attack and the timing of the gala ambush. The sender's code name was a unique symbol, but at the very bottom of the log, there was one single clear signature line, almost certainly left by accident in the final log version. Harper leaned in, her eyes wide with shock as she read the name. "Lila's mother," Harper whispered, the name catching in her throat. "Elena Moretti. But Dante told everyone she was long gone. Presumed dead." Maria nodded slowly. "She is alive. She staged her own disappearance years ago. She has been operating from the shadows, building her own network, waiting for the right moment. The attacks weren't about killing Dante. They were about forcing him to retreat, to show weakness, to make his empire vulnerable so she could step in and take control. She wanted to destabilize him. The truth hit Harper with the force of a wrecking ball. The fear, the trauma, the violence, it was all orchestrated by Lila's own mother. She had risked her own child's life as a calculated move in a cruel, high-stakes game. Harper looked over at Lila, who was now awake, sitting quietly on the sofa, watching them with her wide, intelligent eyes. She used Lila as bait, Harper said, a sickening feeling twisting in her stomach. She knew he would never stop until he confronted the head of the snake, Valente. It was a perfect trap to get Dante to expose himself while she orchestrated the takeover. Maria's desperation grew. She is not a gentle woman, Harper. She is ruthless. She will either kill Dante to take control, or she will use Lila as the new symbol of the Empire. We need to decide right now, what do we do? Harper was facing the ultimate unthinkable twist. Her simple, clear-cut world of good versus bad was completely destroyed. She was left with three impossible choices. Confront Elena. Go after Lila's mother, the true enemy, armed with the evidence. This was an act of pure justice, but it meant confronting the most dangerous, smartest person in the entire organization. A woman who saw her own daughter as a pawn. It would risk Harper's life and Lila's peace forever, or protect Lila. Stay hidden, secure Lila, and let the Moretti and Silver Wolf factions destroy each other in the chaos Elena had created. This was the safest choice for Lila, but it meant letting the architect of all the violence escape justice and potentially take over the city's darkness. Or let the Mafia handle it. Give the evidence to Maria and let Dante's inner circle, the people she barely trusted, deal with the family treason. This was the most morally compromising choice, but it was the one that kept Harper clean of a bloody, inevitable conflict. Harper walked over to the fireplace, her mind racing. She looked down at her hands that were meant to save, to heal, to offer comfort. Not to fight a Mafia queen. She thought of the promise she had made to the quiet, resilient little girl. Lila deserved a future built on truth and safety, not on the lies of a manipulative, distant mother. Harper took a deep breath, turning away from the fire and toward the truth. She looked at Maria, then down at Lila. The third choice is wrong, Harper said, her voice clear and steady. We won't let the Mafia handle it because Elena is the Mafia and she is using everyone. We won't just hide because then this woman wins and Lila grows up in a lie. She knelt down in front of Lila, who was watching her every move. Harper placed a hand gently on Lila's small shoulder. I need you to be strong, sweetie, Harper said. I know something very, very hard and I have to fix it. We are going to put an end to this woman's game. Harper stood up, facing Maria. Her choice was made. It was terrifying, reckless, and driven by a fierce, uncompromising moral compass. We are not going to confront her in the shadows, Harper declared. We are going to give Dante Moretti the proof, and we are going to do it in a way that exposes Elena's betrayal to the entire empire, forcing her into the light where she can be stopped. Harper knew she was choosing the most dangerous path, but it was the path that ensured the truth won. She looked at Lila, who smiled back, a small, knowing smile of trust. Hope was no longer a feeling, it was a plan. She would risk everything to see justice prevail and to ensure Lila's heart was safe from the darkness of her own family. When you decide to fight a war against a ghost, you need an army. But Harper knew that in the world of the Moretti family, an army only brought more betrayal. They needed speed, surprise, and absolute trust. A trust only forged in the crucible of shared fear. After finding the evidence, Harper and Maria immediately set a plan in motion. First, they had to find Dante. They sent a coded message through a secure channel only Dante would recognize. A single sharp sentence. The shadow is Elena. Lila is bait. Meet at the old shipyard. Dante, thankfully, was a man who understood a clear threat. He showed up at the dark, derelict dockyard near the city, looking tired and wounded, but his eyes were sharp. When Harper showed him the evidence, the encrypted log proving his dead wife had betrayed him, his organization, and their daughter, his fury was cold, terrifying, and controlled. She used Lila. She risked her own child to make me weak, Dante stated, the words scraped raw. The personal vendetta against Valente was instantly forgotten. His focus was now entirely on Elena. She is controlling the Silver Wolves and Pietro, but she is still in the shadows, Harper explained, quickly outlining her plan. We have to force her out. We have to take back Lila. Maria had tracked the latest communication from Elena, revealing the location of her hidden fortress, a massive abandoned industrial complex just outside the city limits. It was the perfect place to hide power and orchestrate a takeover. The plan was simple. Dante, driven by vengeance, would be the distraction. Harper, driven by protection, would be the rescue. I need you to cause chaos. Get her to focus on losing the Empire, Harper told Dante. I will go in through the service lines. I am an outsider. They won't look for me. I am bringing Lila home. Dante looked at the ordinary paramedic, the woman in jeans who had suddenly become his only trusted ally. He didn't argue. He simply gave her a hard, final nod. Bring her back, Harper. That is the only victory I care about. The industrial complex was a maze of dark steel and concrete. Dante created his chaos immediately. A series of perfectly timed explosions on the perimeter walls sent a wave of panic through the guards, mostly Silver Wolves and Pietro's bought-off loyalists. Meanwhile, Harper, dressed in dark utility clothing borrowed from Maria's duffel bag, moved like a true shadow. She wasn't trained in combat, but she was trained in navigating dangerous, broken environments quickly and quietly. She used the ventilation shafts and service tunnels, just like she learned to look for the crack in the wall when she was a child. She finally found Lila in a brightly lit, sterile control room, a chilling contrast to the decay around it. Lila was sitting quietly next to a woman who was the mirror image of Dante in her cold, sharp power. Elena Moretti. Elena was beautiful, poised, and utterly ruthless. She was giving orders to a panicked Pietro, who was struggling to keep the Silver Wolves in line amidst Dante's attack. The perimeter is lost, my lady, Pietro cried, terrified. Silence, fool. Keep the main exit secure, Elena snapped. She turned to Lila, offering a cold smile. See, my darling? Your father is predictable. He chooses war over strategy. Soon this will all be ours. Lila didn't speak. She just sat rigid, her eyes fixed on the door. Harper burst into the room not through the main entrance, but through a high-access panel, dropping onto a stack of discarded packing crates. The sudden noise broke the tension and everyone froze. Lila, run! Harper yelled, immediately drawing the fire. Pietro was the first to react, pulling a gun. But before he could fire, Harper, using her paramedic training, grabbed the nearest object, a heavy metal wrench, and threw it hard at the control panel next to him. Sparks flew, the lights flickered, and a loud alarm started screaming through the building. Chaos erupted. Elena shouted orders to her guards. Pietro, realizing his time was up, fired wildly. Gunfire ripped through the room. Harper grabbed Lila and pulled her toward the dark side of the room. Dante's timing was perfect. Hearing the alarm, he and a small trusted team of his old guards burst through the main control room door, returning fire and engaging in intense hand-to-hand combat with the Silver Wolves. In the confusion, Harper shielded Lila behind a console. Pietro saw his chance to escape. He made a run for the back exit, but as he ran, Lila, even in the middle of the gun battle, reacted. Unexpected hero. Lila, without a word, reached out and grabbed a loose power cable from the sparking control panel. She didn't trip him, she snapped the exposed wires at his ankle. Pietro yelped as the shock hit him, sending him sprawling, stunned and momentarily paralyzed. Alliance crumbles. Elena screamed in fury at the betrayal, the failure of her top man. She fired a warning shot over Dante's head to get his attention. Dante, stop this madness. Come back and we rule together. The girl is the symbol. We need her. Dante saw Harper protecting Lila and he saw the downed Pietro. He didn't hesitate. She is a child, not a symbol. And you are a traitor. The tense chase began. Harper grabbed Lila's hand and pulled her through a back door, down a flight of stairs, and into the dark underground tunnels, Dante and his men covering their retreat. In the shadows of the tunnel, just as the last of Dante's guards sealed the entrance, Harper looked at Lila. Are you okay? You shocked Pietro. Lila simply held up her hand, showing a faint burn on her small finger. Daddy's men taught me how to find the weak spot in the electrics. He deserved it. The final secret was revealed when they reached the tunnel exit. Maria was waiting there, not with a car but with a first aid kit and a look of absolute relief. I knew you could do it, Maria said, embracing them both. I took care of Pietro. He won't be talking to anyone again. Maria, the initially suspicious family member, had become the true, quiet sentinel of loyalty, making the ultimate sacrifice to cleanse the empire of the traitor. They sped away just as the complex started burning behind them, a symbol of Elena's crumbling empire. Dante, though wounded, was safe. Lila was safe. Elena was defeated, swallowed by the chaos she created. Harper held Lila close in the speeding car. They had walked into the shadows and emerged into the light. The ordinary paramedic, the wounded boss, the clever child, and the loyal ally had faced the darkness of betrayal and won. Justice had been served by their unwavering commitment to each other. Harper knew her life would never be simple again, but holding Lila, she felt the deep, pure satisfaction of a true hero who had risked everything for love and hope. The ride away from the burning industrial complex was a blur of exhaustion, adrenaline, and relief. When the speeding car finally stopped, they were back at the private hunting cabin, the one place Harper knew was truly safe, far from the city's dark grip. Harper didn't remember lying down. She only remembered the sudden, heavy silence after the sound of gunfire. She woke up hours later, sore and stiff but alive. She shot upright in the small bed, her heart instantly racing. The sun was streaming through the cabin window, but the silence was unnerving. She jumped up and rushed out into the main room. The room was clean and quiet. Maria was carefully applying a bandage to Dante's arm. He was sitting at the table, his face pale but his eyes were clear. Lila was sitting right next to him, calmly feeding him a small piece of toast. Lila. Harper breathed out, relief washing over her. Lila looked up and smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. Good morning, Harper. You slept very late. We won. Harper walked over, collapsing onto a chair. Dante, you're hurt. What happened to Elena? To the Silver Wolves. Dante looked at Harper, the gratitude in his eyes deeper than any word he could say. Elena is gone. Her network has dissolved. Her closest allies were caught in the chaos. The Silver Wolves are leaderless. It's over for now. Thanks to you. He nodded toward Maria. And Maria. She secured the empire while I was busy with my temper. Maria looked at Harper. You were the only one who saw the truth. Pietro confessed everything before he was dealt with. He confirmed Elena planned to frame you first. The immediate danger was over, but the full emotional weight of the victory hadn't settled. Harper looked at Lila, the calmest person in the room. You were incredible, Lila. The trap in the alley, the distraction at the gala. You saved us all, Harper praised her. Lila shrugged, taking a sip of juice. I just did what I was trained to do. Daddy says you must always have contingencies. Then came the final, unbelievable twist. Dante sighed, looking pained. Lila, show Harper what you were drawing. Lila calmly reached under the sofa cushion and pulled out a large sheet of paper, folded many times. It wasn't a sketch of an alley this time. It was a perfectly detailed floor plan of the main estate, Dante's unbeatable fortress. Harper frowned. What is this, sweetie? More tactics. Lila pointed to a small, specific spot on the drawing, marked with a tiny X and labeled Key 7. That is the panic room, Lila explained. Daddy thinks it is secret, but Auntie Maria showed me where the ventilation is weak. She then tapped the small X. That is where I hid this. Lila reached into the pocket of her pajamas and pulled out a small metallic key, exactly the color of Dante's main office key. Before the shooting in the alley, Lila continued, her voice clear, I knew something bad was coming. I saw Pietro talking to strange men near the gate all week. So, I took my father's emergency travel key for the main vault, the one he keeps in his suit jacket, and I hid a copy in the panic room right here. Harper and Dante stared at the small key, then back at the 6-year-old girl. Why, Lila? Dante asked, his voice filled with amazement. Because, Lila said with the final, stunning wisdom of a child far beyond her years, if someone ever tried to take over the house, they would need the main vault key to control the money. If Daddy was gone, Maria or Pietro would fight over the real one. But I knew the empire would only be safe if the key was with the right person. So I hid the copy so the right person could get it when the fight was over. The unthinkable truth. Lila hadn't just been preparing to survive. She had planned contingencies for the entire collapse of her father's empire and had hidden the single most vital asset, the vault key, in a panic room location she chose, not Dante. She had outsmarted Pietro, Elena, and even her own father. Her loyalty was not to the organization, but to Dante's survival and her own future. Dante looked at his daughter, tears finally welling in his fierce eyes. You were protecting everything, my little one. Harper felt an overwhelming rush of love and pride. Lila was a complex mix of innocence and terrifying intelligence, and she was the real, undeniable future. The storm was over. Elena was gone, Pietro was gone, and the Silver Wolves were scattered. Dante's empire was safe, thanks entirely to the strength of two people: the ordinary paramedic who prioritized love over fear, and the clever little girl who prioritized survival over everything. Dante looked at Harper, his expression one of absolute loyalty. This life is not safe, Harper. But you saved the most important part of it. Lila needs you. I need you. Stay. Harper looked down at Lila, who was leaning her head on Harper's side, her trust complete. Harper knew she couldn't go back to her old life. She had seen too much, done too much, and loved this child too fiercely. The world of codes and shadows was her new reality, but now she was ready to face it. Harper smiled, her heart full, a warmth spreading through her chest that was stronger than any gunshot. I'm staying, she confirmed, looking from Lila to Dante. We'll navigate it together. The small, fierce team had won. The story of Harper, the kind-hearted paramedic, and Lila, the clever, resilient child, was just beginning. They had found blood, loyalty, and family not in birth, but in the trenches of survival. Justice had won, hope had triumphed, and love, in the most dangerous of worlds, was now their unbreakable shield. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching to the end. Share your opinion about this story in the comments below. I like getting feedback from my audience. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories.